And then we move on to our final speaker of the day, Robin van den Berg from Tomtom. He will talk about towards 100% electromobility with an EV driver's perspective.
Yes, thank you. Michael, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Can
then
we see you?
Good, then I will also start sharing my screen. Can you see that as well?
Yes, it's as it should be. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So I've called this presentation an EV driver's perspective, but I'll be honest up front as well. I am not an EV driver yet myself. Now, there's a few reasons for this, some of which I will touch upon later. But I'll also touch upon why this presentation is not specifically about me or probably anyone in particular in this audience, but more likely it's about anyone who's not in this audience. And I will dive into that later. So my name is Robin van den Berg. I'm a product manager within Tomtom, focusing on the electric vehicles for passengers, for public and privately owned vehicles. So yeah, excited to be here, and let's start from the beginning with my presentation, because this whole session is really called Towards 100% e-mobility. And I'm sure you all agree that this is a target that we can stand behind. And why is that? Well, because we need cleaner mobility, right? One of the main challenges of the world today is climate change. And we see throughout the world that rising sea levels can cause billions of dollars of damages and displace millions of people if we don't look out. Well, for instance, the Tomtom headquarters is located in Amsterdam, which would be flooded if sea level would rise only by a half a meter. But if you look out throughout the world, right, also cities like New York, Miami, or Gothenburg, or Shanghai, or Bangkok, all these cities are close to shorelines, and that is a significant challenge. But also, climate change will cause drought, scarcity of food resources, etc. So that's clear, and road transport is responsible for over 17% of CO2 emissions caused by humans. So it's something that we need to work on, and we know that over 70% of those emissions can be reduced when transitioning towards electrified vehicles and electrified mobility. So that's on the climate change perspective, but also really around clean air. We're coming from a period where COVID has reduced mobility, and we see that air quality has increased significantly because of that in cities. And reports, for instance, from Health Canada indicate that each electric vehicle that would replace a gas-powered one will bring nearly $10,000 in social benefits. So those are benefits not just from the driver itself, but of everybody that's walking around and living in urban areas. And if EVs replaced about 25% of combustion engine cars currently on the road, in the US, they would save approximately $17 billion annually from climate change and air pollution together. So, but also for me personally, right, as a father of two kids, I really want to push the boundary because of I want to provide a clean environment for my daughters. So that's clear. We need cleaner mobility, but towards 100% e-mobility means that we're not at 100% today. In fact, we're leaving out a large chunk of customers that are buying vehicles, passenger vehicles today. And this number differs a little bit if you zoom in on a particular market, right? And in Europe, we've seen the last few months they're really progressing, but in a lot of areas in the world, they're still lagging. Yeah, there's a lot still to be done, and we can jump to conclusions and point to government incentives, making it cheaper to purchase an EV, or making it expensive in tax increases for combustion vehicles or pushing them out of city centers with low emission zones. We can make all kinds of new startups focusing on this particular niche technology that might help on some case, but we really need to look at scale here. We need to look at why there's 95% people that are not being addressed with electric vehicles, and who are they? And for us, Tomtom, what can we do to convert them to drive an EV? Now, we're not an infrastructure provider, of course, but we consider ourselves a key player that can help with this transition. Now, we all have kind of a stereotype in mind, right? If we look at if we think about a typical EV driver, your stereotype is probably affluent, they're techie, they're maybe a millennial, maybe they have their own business, or they're a consultant. So that might be the 5% of the EV drivers that everybody thinks about. But we need to be more inclusive in our thinking. We need to cater to all the people to reach the other 95% of drivers. Now, it's true today that EV drivers they have more to spend than a typical car buyer. They're more affluent. But also, there's 55% of full electric vehicle buyers are 55 years and older, right? So, and I apologize for using some pictures and some stereotype pictures in the presentation as well. But in practice, they are today more tech savvy than an average driver, and I think that's exactly my point here. We need to provide an EV driving experience that is more inclusive and that doesn't consider, people that are interested in AC DC converters or how many phases a car can charge at, or the amount of applications that are on a smartphone able to support with smart charging and jumping from one app to another. So that is a key consideration that we need to think about. We need to think about solutions that are easy to understand to all. And if we look at, okay, what are people's concerns, right, that limit mass adoption of electric vehicle driving? The three concerns keep popping up with varying percentages, but these are the three main ones, right? Cost, of course, from the battery takes a significant cost of the upfront vehicle purchase price. We've seen that in previous presentations as well, but also uncertainty about the range. Now, despite 15%, despite the fact that the range on average grows about 15% for each model year over the past, there's still uncertainty due to the fluctuation of certain ranges of vehicles because it depends a lot on speed, on weather conditions, and of course, if you run out, the charging time is a bit longer than just refueling. And thirdly, it's about the infrastructure. And we see that there's a lot of growth in infrastructure, and especially I'm from the Netherlands, right? So I know that there's I think the most amount of charging stations per capita in the world, almost in the Netherlands. And we see that also works. It's the fact that maybe they're not actually all used at the same time. So the utilization might be relatively low in public charging, and most charging happens at home or at work. We see that users need to see the charging infrastructure in order to believe. And we also know, of course, that today's affluent drivers, they have their own home, they have their own driveway, but 73% of millennials live in urban areas where they're more likely to, that they need to rely on public charging as well. And we see there's gaps in public charging infrastructure because there's many different suppliers all providing a piece of the coverage, let's say, but there's no real ubiquitous party that offers ubiquitous infrastructure. There's development, but we're not there yet. So how can we help as Tomtom? Well, on the one hand, we have location technology that helps OEMs and vehicle planners with optimizing their vehicle. So you can think about range calculation and route planning. But on the other hand, a very important factor is also to help with the user experience of EV driving. And as Tomtom, we have a suite of products suitable for our automotive customers, our enterprise and consumer customers. And these are available both in-dash and online. So first of all, there's our charging station points of interest and charging station service. So we collect data from over 80 suppliers of charging station data. And we unify the data models, we unify the properties of information and attributes of charging station infrastructure and conflate and overlapping databases. And we do this as part of our map data, but also as a separate service that is available to any third party. Now with this unified information of infrastructure, we use this for our navigation engine and our navigation user interface, right? For just providing turn-by-turn information, which is designed to be safe for in-dash usage and non-driver distracting. And that is really important if you operate in this mobility space. And we incorporate also a range information from the vehicle so that drivers get the best route proposal. So this includes planning a route via a charging station if that is necessary to reach a destination and to find the optimal one as well, given the fact that you have a certain charging curve and you have a certain speed of charging, maybe at highways, or maybe it's more optimal at your destination. And as well, we use that information of roads and of charging information, charging infrastructure for developers of ADAS systems, so advanced driving assistance systems, to optimize vehicle energy consumption. So for instance, a vehicle, we can determine if a charging stop is upcoming on a certain route, and the battery might benefit from knowing that to do preconditioning and preheating for an upcoming charging stop. But we also provide road information for maybe plug-in hybrid vehicles that need to assess if they want to drive for a certain segment on the combustion engine or on the battery. And there's certain areas of the road where one is more beneficial than the other. And we provide our data in a unified format using REST APIs for any developer that wants to build smartphone applications as well as web applications. And this is mainly targeted for our enterprise customers. So with these products, we offer consistent information, and regardless of the country that a user might be in, we do this on a global scale, and we need to do this on a global scale. But there's also a challenge, because actually, if you look at the global scale, it's a heterogeneous landscape of charging station operators and e-mobility service providers. And the surveys have pointed out that 63% of EV drivers have more than one payment card. They have multiple apps on their smartphones to cover their needs for charging. And to make it more complex, some of these companies treat the information of where can I pay, or what's the price, and can I pay with my charging card as their company proprietary information that only they can provide. While at the same time, we see that surveys point out for EV driver, the main pain points are what is the price of the charging station infrastructure around me, and when going abroad, will my charging card work that I use at home? And what is the exact location, and can I find it, and what's the price over there? So just imagine if you go on a road trip on a holiday, you need to stop at a gas station halfway, but you have no clue how much you would need to pay for the fuel, and you need to download an app or maybe multiple to get that information. So this leads to a fragmented user experience. So apps from smartphone, from e-mobility service providers, they don't take into account real-time vehicle information. So they don't know what's the optimal location, when to charge, or what time it is or what the best time is to charge. And if there's change on your trip, for instance, a traffic incident, then you might need to diverge. What is the fastest alternative then? But more importantly, apps don't cater well to in-dash usage to minimize driver distraction or using larger texts and larger button sizes, for instance. Now, distracted driving leads to a lot of accidents each year. Each year, this amounts to about 2.5 million car crashes from drivers who aren't paying attention to the road where they need to focus on. And in the US alone, about 9 people every day are killed due to car crashes involving a distracted driver. So it's really important to provide the right information, the relevant information, but also in a safe way to the drivers when they need it while they drive. And by the way, did you know there's almost 500 e-mobility service providers by now? So which one do you pick as a driver? Now, Tomtom creates value for its end users by fusing a lot of different sources, more than 80 different sources of charging station information, including market reference providers. We have major partnerships with key players, with aggregators that in their turn also aggregate information for a certain market. With local charge point operators, and we also perform field surveys to ensure consistency. And all of this is needed for creating the high correctness of and high level of accuracy of data. So we combine attributes, we check and improve the geocoding from different sources. So sometimes a charging station might appear to be located in an ocean, which is of course not the case in real life. We standardize data formats and POI attributes. We deliver this in a consistent way with our Tomtom map data, and of course we ensure quality. So this all means that we're doing a lot of effort for a very heterogeneous landscape of charging stations to be able to deliver this global coverage that our OEMs and other customers need to develop EV solutions at scale, to reach that 100%, to reach everybody in the market. And today that has resulted in nearly 400,000 charging points across 150,000 locations in 54 countries, which is nice, but it could be simpler, right? Ideally, we work together to open up this data and to align data structures and especially create clarity and of access for payment cards and pricing information. So we would see ourselves as a channel for charge point operators and e-mobility service providers, so bringing their expertise on EV charging together with our expertise on routing and turn-by-turn navigation. Now there are standards available like OCPI, Open Charge Point Interface, or Open Clearinghouse Protocol to deliver standardized information and to align without needing to transform one process into another. And we need to focus on rolling out these type of solutions to all the respective corners of the world to really achieve the scale. And this will not only make our lives easier as Tomtom, but more importantly, it helps us to keep things simple for the driver and shorten the time it takes to collect the data and deliver that also to end users. And once we have that alignment and that transparency of charging station information across large geographies, achieving that scale, I think then we can build out further solutions like vehicle to grid, smart charging, etc. I mean, sure, these are interesting technologies and we really need to have those as well in the next step. But today, these are not understandable for end users. It's very difficult to understand a pilot project where you can pay for parking by providing your energy. So how does that work? What's the price and how much? What would you assume, let's say, as an end user, and how can you make sure that you have enough range left for your trip back? So all these models are interesting, but these are today, I think, too much focused on the techies, let's say, and they could use an approach also from the end user and thinking, okay, how can we simplify it for the end user as much as possible? And that's not easy to do, right? The process of making it simple is not easy to do, and that requires a lot of effort that we hide for the user. But I think it's an essential one to keep that to really focus and to really achieve that that scale. and to achieve and create a more inclusive electric mobility as well. So simplifying and standardizing data helps us to focus on the real issues, like how can we ensure that we have available charging stations for everybody and that they don't run out in peak hours, what we see as well. So we have a lot of infrastructure, but they're all occupied because everybody wants to charge at the same moment of the day. How can we avoid those type of things while keeping it simple for the driver? So with that thought, I'd like to conclude. So what will the future hold? I don't know, but we better be ready to scale up. Right, to summarize the points that I've made on this presentation, we need to have a more inclusive approach to get to 100% e-mobility. So that means an easy user experience rather than fragmented solutions that work maybe at 5% of the highways, or high-tech features that are interesting but require end users to convert their vehicles voluntarily. You need to be able to build this at scale and make that part of the vehicle production. Now we need an open approach to standardize and with transparent data that will benefit scaling, that will benefit acceleration of electric vehicles and vehicle adoption, and to make it simpler. And by working together, we can bring a user experience that's also safe for in-vehicle use, and that's understandable for everybody, and that won't lead to an increased distracted driver, so that anybody in the world can use an EV safely. And with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. To you, Robin. So we have a question online. Let's start with that. So does Tomtom use fleet management data to find optimal placement for charging infrastructure? Gordian would like to help. So another speaker just talked. Answer the question.
So we don't place charging infrastructure ourselves, right? So it's up to charge point operators to install the charging stations and to operate them. And what we do is index them and how do you say, make sure that they're findable for users, for drivers. So the planning of where those charging stations need to be placed in real life, that's not up to us. But of course, we do provide solutions, right? We have an extensive suite of traffic and historic traffic products that can be helpful for, indeed understanding where, what are the ideal locations for planning charging stations. So we don't do that ourselves, but we have information that can be beneficial for that. Yes.
But I guess for the end user, you can optimize.
Yes. Yeah. Indeed. Charge. Yeah, indeed. So we do provide solutions, right? That if you plan a trip from A to B and it exceeds the natural the autonomy of the vehicle, what is the ideal spot where you can charge, right? And that has a lot of different variables to it. Yeah, so that needs to be taken into account while routing.
I don't see any more questions online, so I have an additional question. I agree that you can always find good opportunities if you open up and start sharing data and utilize that data to optimize the overall system. But the issue is always these key blockers that is hindering the way. So from Tomtom's viewpoint, what have you seen are the main blockers to do this data sharing?
So I think maybe it's a bit of market attitude for some players that consider themselves, let's say, the owner of the EV experience, while they're not realizing, charging itself is not the complete experience for EV driving. It's just a means to an end. I don't think anybody has planned ever a trip to visit a charging station, but they always need energy to visit something else, their family or their holiday location. So I think it's a bit of the mindset as well for certain industry segments I mean, it's not all bad, right? There's a lot of companies out there that are more supportive and more open to share their data and to use the standards that are available. But I think for the ones that aren't, maybe they need to be forced as well through government, right? That if there's municipalities that are planning certain charging infrastructure and considering offering it to one supplier versus another, that also the openness of data and you know, listing the base prices publicly as just as a start is a key factor in sourcing one supplier versus another.
Okay, good. Yeah, we got one more question, which will be the last question since we are running over time. So it's time for lunch soon. We have a question here on extend on cloud APIs for what you plan. Any sensor plans too?
I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly.
So I think the question was, please expand on cloud APIs and what are you planning for that? And
Okay,
do you also have plans with sensors?
So sensor data, I think, is a bit more focused on hardware development and ensuring that this data is that the data is coming from that is coming from hardware is also open. But so we're indeed focusing more on more and more on online APIs and also moving our capabilities for navigation online. So definitely we will extend in that, and we already have on our developer portal, for instance, APIs that allow you to find any charge station and with the relevant information across our data sets across the 54 countries. We also have route planning APIs that allow you to, yeah, of course, go from A to B with a certain vehicle parameter set with certain charging characteristics and find the charging stations en route. We also have APIs that provide you the reachable range in 360 degrees around you, given any point and given a certain energy budget or even a certain time budget. So that also allows for vehicle planning and logistics planning. So definitely those are, yeah, I think key products that are helpful for anybody in this sector. And I think the strength there is that we unify that across many different countries and many different networks. So yeah, we expect to see a lot of growth for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I would like to conclude this session, and please give a hand in the auditorium to Robin. Thank you very much for that talk, and thank you to all of the speakers. It's been a very interesting session, I think. And in case you have any more questions to the speakers, please hunt them down online and contact them if you have any more queries on what was presented today or future collaborations. So thank you a lot, and have a good lunch, and we will then resume again at 13:30 with the other 3 sessions on intelligent transport systems, the link between transport infrastructure and urban planning, as well as transport in the time of pandemics. So you're welcome to those sessions, and you find the links online. So just click on them to join those sessions. Thank you so much for today, and have a good lunch.